Hi, and welcome to another Candace's Corner, a podcast from the Reset at the Reset. Reset is a lived experience, leadership, and communication hub where people with developmental disabilities speak up, share their stories, and lead change in their communities. I am the host, Candace Cunningham. I am a person with lived experience in cerebral palsy and developmental disabilities, and I work as an outreach assistant at UMKC, the Institute for Human Development. I've worked in the disability advocacy field since 2006 with a special focus on employment. Today we're going to continue our series learning about the history of developmental disabilities in Missouri. Today our guest is Larry Opinsky, a Missouri disability advocate, consultant, speaker, and parent. Larry has spent decades helping people with disabilities live a meaningful life in their communities and has been a leader in Missouri's directed support movement. Hi, Larry. How are you today?
Great, Candace. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. Today, Larry is going to teach us about what self-directed support is and how they work in Missouri, how Missouri moved from institutional care to self-directed support, how people with disabilities and their family help make these changes, the current challenges facing self-directed support, and the future. So, Larry, could you um, could you tell us about yourself?
I'm a dad. I have two children. My wife and I have two children. My daughter Lily is 27. My son Sam's 22. Lily was born with and continues to live sort of the clinical world of Rett syndrome, RETT. Um, Lily's 27 in her head, but her body just absolutely does not do the stuff she wants it to do. She communicates with her eyes. She's mostly nonverbal, although she'll get her point across with all of her nonverbals. Um, she is non-ambulatory, so she's able to bear weight, but she needs full assistance to do so. And she also doesn't really have use of her hands. They not functional usage, so she can't like push her chair around, which means Lily needs full-time assistance with everything she does. Um, I Lily's younger brother is 22. He just graduated from college, neurotypical, great sibling, great son, great human being. Um, and My wife works full time in finance. And for the first 35 years of, well, for 35 years and for Lily's first, I don't know, 18, 16, 17, 18 years of her life, I was in industry. All my work in the disability was learning about and supporting her and advocating for her and helping friends. And I did a lot of volunteer hours. Through that time, I was on the board and was the chair of Missouri Protection and Advocacy. I volunteered with a group called Missouri back in the day when HAB centers were the norm, even though we do still have HAB centers in our state. There was a group of us that got together across the state. I'm a Partners in Policymaking graduate from 2003. Yeah, a long time ago. Um, but really trying to pay forward that education that was invested in me back then. And for, the first 35 years, I owned a shoe factory actually in the boot heel. So I was in business and in industry. Um, what I knew about disability is what I learned in classes I took and the volunteer time I put in. And then I decided that wasn't for me anymore. And for the past 10 or 11 years, I got talked into really at the beginning being a professional disability advocate. So now I help families, I help businesses, I help schools and whatever other community resources work and help people with disabilities live their best life in whatever way, shape, or form.
So you've been all around. Yes. So could you what is self-directed support?
Self-directed supports is a really it's a Medicaid waiver funded program. So people who have Medicaid and are also eligible for waivers, um, which means their disability is permanent and onset before the age of 22, I believe. Um, and they're eligible for these waiver services. And it's one of those services. It's for people that need personal care attendants to support them in their daily life. And there's sort of two models to get that. Some are what's called an agency-based model, and that's traditionally what a lot of people know about. Sometimes you see the billboards on the highway, "Hell, help take care of your friend and get paid for it." So that's an agency model. That's where a company receives the Medicaid funding and then they send people to your house. Um, the other model is self-directed, and the self-directed model is where the state basically takes the funds that they would have given an agency and they put it in a special account with a contracted, it's an online entity. Um, they call it a financial fiduciary. And they basically put the funds there. And then the family, us, and I'll use myself as an example. You know, our family, my wife is the designated representative. So Lily can't manage it all herself. But in the self-directed program, she's allowed to assign somebody to manage it for her. So my wife is a designated rep, and we go out and we hire different people that we recruit and train and hire different people. Many in our house, it's college students in St. Louis here, um, and we train people and to support Lily. Um, and help her with her every need, that all the stuff that we do as her natural supports. We hire people to do that, and her Medicaid through self-directed sports pays for all of that.
So if we didn't have the self-directed support, they would have to go the traditional way through an agency where that agency would assign them. You wouldn't be able to pick who to work with Lily. Lily.
For the most part, that's true. Yeah, there are some agencies that will, if you've got somebody that is eligible, that they'll sign them up. Some, but there's a big wage difference that the workers can make if they go through the agency model. The maximum wage that they could make per hour is probably 20, 21, maybe $22 an hour. And in the self-directed framework, they can earn the wage up to $29 an hour and sometimes more if there's some medical necessity.
Could you explain before self-directed, what was there, what supports were there before we had self-directed?
So self-directed's been around for a little over 20 years. Um, and in the state of Missouri, there's over 3,000 families that use it now. It's been growing at a really big rate, but even 10 years ago, there was probably 1,000 families or less that are using it. And everybody else either had to use an agency um, or they didn't have anything at all. They're natural supports. And when I say natural supports, I'm talking about, you know, their guardians, their parents, their brothers and sisters and grandparents and sometimes kids. They would have to just do it for free. They would have to quit their jobs or whatever else to provide the level of support. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is there isn't somebody to do that, in which case the individual who needs that level of care would have to go to a residential setting, like move out of their house if there was one available, or if there wasn't one available, they would be put into one of the state habilitation centers, institutions that could be hundreds of miles away from their house with no contact with anybody.
Yeah, 'cause I don't remember when, but I've heard of um people who live from like in Kansas City, say, but because their family member might have passed away or whatever, they had to move to what was open as at that center, and that could have been in St. Louis or in the Boot Hill. Well, they don't know anyone, honestly.
Yeah, and historically, it's not as safe an environment for people with significant disabilities who require a lot of care, and especially for those who are unable to report themselves. Like my daughter is nonverbal. Um, Her safety comes from her community, not the paid staff that's around them, but the pharmacist that fills the prescriptions that she goes up to once a week to pick up, or the checkout lady or man at the grocery store that she goes to once a week, that um, that is her community. And if you have to go someplace that you have no community, the safety goes down really, really quickly, and you are surrounded by only people who are paid to be with you. And unfortunately, historically, in the public system, that's not been the safest place.
Yeah. Back before self-directed, why did family want something different? A different option?
Well, that's a great question. And I think, I don't have the quote in front of me, but Robert Wood Johnson, which is a famous medical and social service practitioner back in the East, basically said the concept is, if you give the nuclear family that knows and cares for the person most the power and the funding to support their loved one, then all the good things will happen then. And I think that's what it boils down to. I think, when an agency or a support coordinator for Medicaid that is responsible for arranging and overseeing funding is the one that is responsible or is overseeing, they don't know that person as well as the family does, as well as the natural caregivers do. And not by any fault, a support coordinator could have 50, 80, 100 people on their caseload. An agency might service hundreds of different families. It's just organically, it is better for the money to and the control that self-directed gives a family of a person with a disability. It's better to give it to them because they know what's best. They know how to train the person. They know the personality pieces. They know, for my daughter, you know, yes, trust is a huge piece. It's always a huge piece when caregiving, but understanding, the nuances of what she likes, what she dislikes, and then how to read the nonverbals and how to honor her voice. And that's what this is all about. It's all about honoring the voice of the person who needs the supports. In a um, in an agency-based model, um, or even in a state-based model, it's hard because there's a lot of voices those people are listening to. But the family in a self-directed setting, they listen, and most intently.
Yeah. And with the agency, I was just thinking about this. It might be a lot of um, involving because,
Turnover, yeah.
yeah, that's the word. Whereas with the self-directed, I can't remember, you talked about the pay in a way, but you have that safety and you know that person. I don't know if that's the right way.
No, yeah, they're in your house. And for our house, our caregivers that we hire that, are paid for by self-directed, they come to our home. They eat at our table. They become part of our family. Um, Great example. One of our Lily's prior caregivers, she was a occupational therapy student, and she graduated, and she has her doctorate, and she just got her passed her boards, and she's getting married this weekend. And we know her fiance, and we've known him because they're part of sort of our family. They've been to, family celebrations, and they invited us to the wedding. We're going to their wedding on Sunday. It's that closeness and that proximity that is next to impossible to develop in an agency or a state-run model. Again, because there's just so many people. If someone comes to our house from an agency, or if we were using an agency, they might come to our house for 5, 10 hours a week, but they might go to three other houses for 10 hours a week. So it organically is a removed event by having a different model than self-directed.
Um, Thank you. And congratulations to, um, I forgot her name, but getting married on Sunday.
Yeah, yeah.
What advice would you give other families who are maybe thinking about self-directed? Oh, not other families or other individuals.
Uh-huh, sure. Look, it's work, and there's unpaid work that goes with it, and that is the reason why the wages for the workers can be so much higher. You have to recruit. You've got to you got to go find the people. You've got to find the applicants. You got to interview the applicants. You have to train. Once you find one you like, you have to do all the paperwork. Um, and there's, it's a job. It's I-9s and abuse and neglect certificates and taxes. And so there's a lot of paperwork that's required. It's not necessarily hard, but it's not nothing. It's not like calling an agency and saying, hey, I need somebody, and they send somebody over, because the agency is doing all of that paperwork, all of that compliance stuff, all of the taxes and all that stuff. So it's a burden, and it does require um, the ability to do it. And there's a good amount of compliance because, the beautiful thing about the self-directed program, partially because it's new and partially because of the way it's set up, is there's a good amount of oversight and compliance so that, there is no fraud, or very, very little. There is no abuse of the system, and things like that. But to do that, the employer, the designated rep, the person, the family, if they're thinking about it, yeah, you got to file monthly reports. And yeah, you got to approve every single time card that comes through and make sure that the employee's notes are accurate. And you got to keep an eye on the budget. So if you're considering it, make sure your family, or you have someone you can assign to the designated rep, is able to do those things. Um, it, it's not like, oh, you could pay the person more money, let's just do it that way. And then you realize, oh, wait a second, you mean I got to find these people too? And I got to train them, and I got to do all this paperwork. Um, so I don't want to turn people off to self-directed, but I don't want to hide the work. There is an amount of work. I would say my wife is my daughter's designated rep. I would say in an average month, she probably puts in maybe 4 to 6 hours a month of work for the program.
To approve the time sheet.
Yeah, and understand the computer and the paperwork and all of the things is probably 4 to 6 hours a month. And that's just for one, I mean, that's just Lily. So if you have, a family that has two or three kids that all receive it, and you have all more caregivers, it's a little more work than that.
That's true. And when you was talking, self-directed take out the middleman.
Yeah, that's really what it. And and not to take over the switch the conversation, but in our public advocacy that the SDS Family Group has done, this year was a difficult year. The original budget that the governor proposed had a significant, over 30% cut to wages for self-directed that was presented. And our family group had to get together, and we're all across the state. There's over 1,000 of us that sort of communicate. Um, and we had to get in front of our legislators, in front of the legislated officials who, this is a little program to them. And we had to explain to them why it was fiscally responsible, why there's value in it. And the biggest value is there's the overhead that is normally paid to an agency to do all that management stuff in self-directed is done for free. Now, we don't love that it's done for free. I mean, we'd love to get paid for those 4 to 6 hours or whatever, but it is a it's a cost of time that all of the families that are using it find value in. It's worth it for us because we can get better people. We can have more control. Our Lily is happier and has a better quality of life because we're able to use this program.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And what could you talk about that Missouri self-directed support group? I know you mentioned that.
So I didn't start it. I came in early. It was a group of families. It's over 10 years ago now. A group of families in the St. Louis area and their caregivers, really, that all got together on Facebook and they were like, okay, well, we're using self-directed, which means our people, the caregivers were looking for a way to socialize out in the community with their with their clients together. So it started off as really organic as a group of families that are like, hey, I want to, we're going to meet up, go to the bowling alley on Thursday at this location. Anybody want to meet up with us? You know, and that was sort of the beginning of it in Facebook land. And it kind of grew to, hey, I've got extra hours, like a caregiver would be on. And they'd be like, hey, I have extra hours. Anybody else need some help? So it was a sharing of caregivers. So that was the very beginning of it. It has sort of changed through the years. Um, the Facebook group that we operate called We Care Caregivers is now a closed group. We don't let just any caregiver or anything on. And there's a lot of logistical reasons for that. But it's a safe space for families to interact with each other. And then it has grown. We would have monthly meetings. We used to meet at Webster University, and a wonderful, wonderful woman who helped start it and is still part of it, Dr. Victoria McMullen, um, is now a retired from Webster University, but she would get us a room there and we'd meet up there once a month and start talking about topics that we all cared about, like how to write an ISP, or what are good volunteer ideas, or what's the best way to find people. And we did that for a long time until COVID, which of course, the blip, as I call it. And COVID put us all online. And then we had the beginning, that was sort of the beginning of the direct support crisis, which is there's not enough people who want to do this kind of work that I've been able to get in touch with. And since then, so that was what, 1920, so that 5, 6 years ago. Since then, it's really grown to be a statewide offering because we're doing all of our meetings online now. We're still having the same kind of meetings. Um, we have branched into a lot of what I call little a advocacy. So not big A advocacy, I call like what we do for Lily. But little a advocacy is what I call is for like the public good, or it helps everybody. It might help Lily, but so the little A advocacy could be around the state's required to file with the Federal Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, CMS, every year an update to their plan. And they were putting stuff in their plan about our program that we didn't agree with. So we would get together and testify in front of the Mental Health Commission, or we would have regular meetings with the director of the Department of Mental Health that's in charge of self-directed supports. Our group has standing. We are a recognized stakeholder, and um, we can ask them the questions that maybe an individual might not get to the right person. So we do that for little a advocacy. And then, like I said, on the most recent round with these budget cuts, um, that's the legislative side. Um, we now have a Facebook page, not a Facebook, a web page, mosds.org, mosds.org. And we've got a bunch of things on there, and we've used that as the basis for our legislative advocacy this year. One of the biggest challenges is finding people and hiring people. And it used to be back in the day, because see, I'm an old gray guy, right? Back in the day, we would print posters up and we'd take them up to the universities, and we'd staple them onto the bulletin board and said, hey, you want a job? Pull this tab off. Most of that stuff's gone. It's all digital, it's all online, and there's a service that a lot of the universities use called Handshake. And you can't register on Handshake as an individual. You got to be a company. But what our group has done over the past 4 or 5 years is we basically got them it took us a little while, a long while. We got them to recognize our group, our family support group, as a business. And if you pay a very small annual fee, it's like $26 now, um, to be a member, to join the mosds.org group, the biggest thing that it gets you a bunch of stuff on the web page that's like historical presentations and examples and some cool resources. But the big thing it does is it lets you put a handshake listing up under our group.
And is that for anyone in Missouri? Like, do they have just live in St. Louis or?
No, the whole state. And we have members in Kansas City. We have universities in Kansas, and you can choose almost any university you want anywhere. But we have, like in Kirksville, we have members from Kirksville that I'm not sure if they're using Handshake or not, but I know we get those of us who do have listings on, we advertise, we check the little box. Oh, we want Kirksville. Can't remember, Northwest. They've changed their name a couple times, but whatever the big school is up there, they're part of our chosen marketing group. But I'm going to pass your name off to somebody that I know, or I'm going to put it up on the Facebook page saying, hey, I just had an applicant from Kirksville. Anybody interested? And again, still sharing as much as we can with the families on that closed Facebook page, but really trying to get sort of a group think, a helpful community, a closed community.
That's awesome. My mom is, I know I told you this, but my mom's on that page, and I think I am too, actually. But I see people, and when you guys went to the legislature, I saw mad people, and I'm like, I understand, and I never seen this side of you, but I understand. I don't want to, but yeah. But I believe that what you're doing in that group is amazing because you're in St. Louis, correct? And you're connecting everyone together.
We're trying. One of our big things that we've been doing this for years, advocating with the Department of Mental Health with the SDS director, is we want them as part of SDS intake. Like if a support coordinator has a meeting in Lebanon, Missouri, with a family, and the family needs PA services, and they're entertaining self-directed, even just the idea they might think about self-directed. We would love for the state, for the Department of Mental Health, to give out our information and say, hey, go to this web page and go to this Facebook group and ask to join and ask them questions, because we truly believe that's where the power is. The power is in all of us being connected and not just being our own little tiny community and just the people we know. The more we know, and then that's the beauty of the internet. The more we know, the more powerful we are, and the better our lives can be for our loved ones.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, what is your call to action for the SDS support?
Let me temper this. So we have approved, we have we're successful in lobbying the legislature, and we got them to take out the reductions to the self-directed supports so far. It is sitting on the governor's desks waiting for signatures. So the current, immediate, and the moment call to action is go to the mosds.org webpage, and we have a whole little instruction on contacting the governor, or contact the governor yourself in any way, shape, or form and ask him respectfully to not line item veto, you know, these things that we changed. But that's all going to be done in the next 30 days. He's got until the end of June to sign it. So that is the current most immediate call to action. But I think long term, the call to action for any family that has a loved one with a disability, and especially if you're using self-directed, is to get in touch and and with your elected legislators, your representative, your senator, any elected leader in, and specifically in the state. So yes, you can reach out to your federal representative and your federal senators that go to Washington, D.C. But what's more important is your local ones that you're staying with, and introduce yourself. Let them understand your family and what this means to you as one of their constituents, and the impact that, if you are using the self-directed program, the impact that it has on your life and how your loved one has a different quality of life, and the employees that you have are in better situation because of this program, be, and and how well it is run. But connect with your local legislators. And I know a lot of people are not political. That's just a lot of people aren't. They're just not connected. My call to action is, this is something you got to speak up for, because the federal government in the House Bill 1, one big beautiful bill that was passed last year, has cuts to Medicaid, all Medicaid, that over 10 years totals over $1 billion, which means every state, including Missouri, is going to have to figure out a way to fund those pieces themselves, and they have to decide what they want to cut. And the important thing is to understand, or to teach each legislative leader, is the waiver services, the home and community-based services that SDS is part of, and so is DayHab, and so is vocational stuff. That is the most important for people with disabilities.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. Yeah. Um, Before we wrap up, when you think about all the progress that has been made over the years, what gives you hope for the future for SDS in Missouri?
Without appearing to be pandering, it's people like you, Candace. It's self-advocates. It's people who have disabilities, that have the appropriate supports because of these programs, contributing to the community. And you're doing something phenomenal, which is in the public space, but I'm talking about someone who has a job at a office, and the way they're able to have that job, maybe they can't drive, and maybe they need extra assistance with some things around the house and in the community. But because of these home and community-based programs, these people are active in society and they're contributing, and the community is prospering, and every the happiness that I've seen from the people in the disability space that I work with, that's what gives me hope. Because I've given a lot of presentations through the years to not the disability community about this. For instance, Lily and I actually do a presentation to some Wash U medical school students, fourth year students. And the very beginning of that presentation talks about the history of disability. And I show a little clip from a film um, that talks about institutionalization and what it looked like. And this was not that long ago. This was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. Um, and the condition that people with disabilities were forced to live in. And then I see today, and I see my daughter going to, an adapted gym with her caregiver, to get exercise and to have a community at the gym. And that gives me hope.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on to Candace's Corner today, and I appreciate you talk about self-directed and the history and where we can go from here. Thank you all for watching, and thank you very much, Larry. I appreciate you, and have a great day.
Candace, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be on your podcast, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.